ThePartyKnife bids thee.
Welcome.
Oh yeah! What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another ThePartyKnife party news video. Now, we got a lot to go through, so I'm not going to waste any more time, but I do want to give a quick shout out to DannyLou8299 on YouTube, who reminded me and kept me on my toes when he said that I actually forgot about the Battering Ram talent, so I thought we'd just start off by covering that. Doubles the width of the Valiant Charge and allows Cooper to charge through great foes. And well, that's pretty much exactly what it does. It allows you to charge through enemies that are not man-sized, whilst also doubling the width of the charge in which you're going to stagger enemy foes. And I actually really do like the idea behind this talent. Whether or not it is viable, I do not know. I haven't done enough testing, but I definitely feel like it's an interesting change. But with that said, let's move on to Carillion, who's currently floating upside down for maximum confusion and for absolutely no reason. But let's not waste any more time doing that and move on to the Swiftbow, which is probably one of the ranged weapons that has received the most love in this recent patch, increasing its armor damage by approximately 100% on charged shots, increased monster damage by 30% on charged shots, increased cleave by 75% for quick shots, and increased cleave by 50% for charged shots. In other words, it's pretty much received an all-around buff in terms of damage and cleave, and this will hopefully be sufficient to push the Swiftbow from the realms of obscurity and into the realm of viability. And whilst I haven't given it a proper tryout yet, I definitely think this is a good change, because contrary to popular belief, the Swiftbow was just not very good before. But hopefully this will be enough to change that. But to move on, the Handmaiden has received a change to one of her passive abilities, namely Ariel's Benison, which now increases the speed with which she revives friendly players, as well as giving them 20 extra health. On top of that, she's received two changes to her talent pool, the first being Asri's Alacrity? I don't know how to pronounce that word. Anyways, pushing or blocking an attack grants the next two strikes 30% attack speed and 10% power. And it does pretty much exactly what it says as far as I can tell, although admittedly I've never been a fan of aggressive buffs coming after a block. But in this case, since it also triggers simply by pushing an enemy, I can definitely see a lot more use for this talent. Last but not least, as far as the Handmaiden goes, we got a new talent which is really interesting called Shifting Seasons. Dodging while blocking increases your dodge range by 20%, dodging while not blocking increases the power of the next strike by 10%. In other words, if you're dodging and attacking, you have a constant 10% power buff that you can see down below underneath my health. Whereas if you're dodging while you're blocking, you essentially get a 20% increase to the range with which you dodge. And if you're using the dual daggers, that's a total increase of 55%, which gives you quite an insane dodge range. And speaking of insane, it's time to move on to the real Slim Shady, or more specifically, her volley crossbow, which has first of all received an increase to the maximum ammo capacity equal to 45 to match Saltspire's crossbow, as well as a boost to its cleave capacity equal to 75%. And while I welcome this buff, since I really feel like the volley crossbow isn't seeing enough play, I do think they could have done a little bit more on this, since I really doubt that this is sufficient to make the volley crossbow viable. Since it is a Shade exclusive, it's always going to be hard for it to compete with weapons like the longbow. Now moving on to the only other change to the hero Shade, which has received quite a lot of attention, and that's the modification of the talent Cloak of Mist. Infiltrate's cooldown reduced by 45%, and after leaving stealth you gain a 100% critical hit chance for a total of 4 seconds, which is definitely a good change, since prior to the new patch you only gained the cooldown reduction, which made the talent 100% obsolete, and the new version allows you to do things like this. God damn it, did you not get the memo? You were supposed to die as well. Much better, goddamn storm remnants. But on a serious note, I really like this talent. Do I think it's better than Cloak of Mist? No, almost certainly not. But do I like the fact that there's an alternative that allows you to actually utilize backstab more efficiently? Yes, I really do, because now there's an alternative to Cloak of Mist that is at the very least viable in its own right. But with that said, let's move on to the man who single-handedly saved Baby Yoda, the Bounty Hunter. Starting off with Saltspire in general, he has received changes to a total of 2 of his ranged weapons, the volley crossbow and the repeater pistol, the most significant of which are on the volley crossbow, with an ammo pool boosted by 50% from 30 and to 45, so it matches that of Shade, a cleave increase equal to 75%, just like Shade's, a reload time reduced from 5 seconds down to 4 seconds, and a dodge count increase to 3 from 1, adding some much needed mobility to the weapon. As for the repeater pistol, it has received the linesman modifier on its bullet spray. Linesman on ranged weapons gives the shotgun mass reduction, which in normal English basically just means that its bullet spray has more cleave. Now, as for the bounty hunter himself, he has received a total of 6 changes and or reworks to his talent pool. Starting off with Steel Crescendo. Upon firing his last shot, Victor gains 15% attack speed and 15% power for 15 seconds, which is the buff you can see on the right side underneath my health. And whilst I don't think this is going to be a super viable or very often used talent, I can see a world in which it could be really interesting working together with a ranger veteran to constantly and intentionally run out of ammunition. Up next, we have quite a significant rework and a talent called Blessed Combat, which reads: melee strikes makes up to the next 6 range shots gain 15% power, ranged hits makes up to the next 6 melee strikes gain 15% power, and melee kills resets the cooldown of blessed shots. And there was already a talent that this has replaced, which just did the last thing, which is melee kills resets the cooldown. But what I really love about this talent is how it encourages you to switch between melee and ranged weapons in a fluent and dynamic way and rewards you for doing so. And as you can see down by my buffs underneath my health, every time I hit something with my melee weapon I gain another stack, and every time I hit something with my ranged weapon it consumes one of those stacks and gives me a melee stack, that I of course then consume when hitting something with my melee weapon. Now, an important thing to note here is that even if I were to use my repeater pistol and do a fully charged shot with 8 pellets, that would only consume 1 stack and it would only give me 1 stack. And all in all, I think this is an exceptionally strong and exceptionally fun talent, which just happens to be a really good combo. Moving on, we got a talent called Rile the Mob. Ranged critical hits grants Victor and his allies 10% movement speed for 10 seconds, which replaces the old talent Hunter's Pursuit, which did essentially the same thing, only it would only affect you and the movement speed increase was 20%, which I think is a good change to promote team play. Moving on, we have a talent called Dual Action. Killing an elite whilst out of ammunition restores 20% of your max ammunition, and melee kills reload Victor's ranged weapon, which I could actually see getting used alongside Steel's Crescendo. That way you could intentionally run out of ammunition in order to get the 15% power and attack speed buff, which would then quickly be followed up by a melee kill which would not only give you ammunition, but also reload your repeater pistol, allowing you to quickly use this ammunition again in order to regain the buff. And whilst I'm not disillusioned enough to think that this is actually going to be part of the proper meta, then I can definitely see this being used as sort of a niche build. Up next, we have a fairly insignificant change to the talent Just Reward. Ranged critical hits reduce the cooldown of Locked and Loaded by 20% and can only trigger once every 10 seconds, which in practice removes 15 seconds off your career ability cooldown. But since this can only be activated once every 10 seconds, and since you still have double shotted, which assuming you can headshot stuff, actually just removes 80% of the cooldown, I don't really see much use for this talent. And last but not least, as far as the bounty hunter is concerned, we have Return on Investment, which looks really interesting, and modifies Victor's sidearm to fire 2 blasts of shield penetrating pellets in a devastating cone. Each kill with the blast increases the amount of pellets in the next blast, capping out at 20, which mechanically speaking sounds super duper interesting, since it essentially means that the more stuff you kill with your ulti, the more damage your next ultimate will do. Also, it makes it absolutely devastating to miss. But as you can see in the bottom, we now have a buff with the number 20, which means our next ultimate will gain 20 extra pellets. And now this was not a critical hit, since I forgot to wait until my passive was off cooldown, but nonetheless I think this is an interesting talent, although I still don't see it being better than Double Shotted, but that's mostly because Double Shotted is just absolutely broken and insane. But with that said, I think we're all ready to move on to our final hero. It is of course Siena, or more specifically the Unchained. But starting off with the Beam Staff, it has received a couple of buffs. And to start things off, the overcharge generated by the shotgun blast, aka the attack where you hold down right click then left click, has been reduced significantly by roughly 33%. On a more technical note, weapon switching while charging the weapon is reduced from 0.2 seconds to 0 seconds so as to match all of her other staffs. Lastly, the weapon switch window after a shotgun blast has been reduced from 0.4 to 0.3 seconds so as to match the 0.31 animation time of the shotgun blast. And if that sounded confusing, then worry not. All it really means in regular English is that now you can actually switch weapons right after your shotgun blast, and generally speaking it's going to be easier to swap to your melee weapon so you can block. Moving on to some talent changes, we got Outburst, which was previously called Searing Grasp. And essentially what it does is pushing an enemy is gonna set them on fire, and the dot has been increased in length to 4 seconds, as well as a heavy attack causing your next push arc to be increased by 70%. And as you can see here, pushing an enemy simply sets them on fire. Up next we got a slight buff to the talent Chain Reaction, the proccing chance of which has been increased to 40%. And just in case you didn't know how this talent works, every time a burning enemy dies, there's a 40% chance that it's going to explode, which makes it great for dealing with high density hordes. Not to mention the part where stuff explodes. God, I mean, only kids would love explosions. I mean, stuff exploding? Pfft, no adult would ever bother with that. I mean, explosions are so cringe. Anyways, where was I? Let's move on. To the talent Numb the Pain. Reduces damage taken by 5% and overcharge generated by blood magic by 16.6% for 15 seconds after vending, and stacks up to 3 times. In other words, every time you vend, you're gonna receive damage reduction as well as a reduced cost to all overcharge related things for a total of 15 seconds, which all in all seems like a good change. Up next we got quite an interesting talent called Abandon. When Siena overcharges, she starts rapidly exchanging her health to ability cooldown. Now since I'm in the keep in this clip, you can't actually see me exchange my health for anything since, you know, I can't actually lose any health, but according to the patch notes, you exchange 6% of your health for 10% cooldown reduction. The idea being that as long as you have health, you're still gonna be able to activate your ulti in time, essentially making overcharging less of a death sentence. And all in all, I really like this talent. I think it's really good for newer players, since the Unchained can be oh so unforgiving if you don't know what you're doing. Up next we got the talent Fuel for the Fire, which has received a slight buff in the form of the duration of the actual power buff being increased to 15 seconds, down from 10 seconds, in an attempt to give you more time to actually utilize this power. And since it is a raw power buff, it affects both ranged and melee damage. However, something I never really thought about is whether or not that power buff is actually applied to the damage of the actual ulti. Now I want to give a quick shout out to Zara, or also Zara, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, sorry. But anyways, for bringing this up in my initial video where I went through the patch notes. And with that said, let's move on to the final talent, known as Wildfire, which adds a burning aura that ignites nearby enemies when activating Living Bomb and massively increases the stagger power. But that's not all it does, because what it doesn't say here is that it also adds a sweet ass animation to your ultimate, and is absolutely hilarious to combine with Chain Reaction, as I shall now demonstrate. Wait, that sound effect. No! That's fucking golden. No! But on a serious note, the whirling fire animation actually looks pretty cool, if I may say so myself. And all in all, I think there's some pretty good changes done to the Unchained. Ah, explosions. However, when that's said, in my own personal opinion, there's really only one way to fix the Unchained. She needs some sort of dual-wielding fire weapon that is exclusive to the Unchained, cause she only has 6 melee weapons, which is less than any other hero. And only 3 of them at best really feel like they're fitting for the Unchained. But hey, that's just my opinion, and you're more than welcome to let me know just how much you disagree down in the comments below. Hello, sir. There's a little bit of a goofy way for you guys to say hello in Danish. Now, I think we're going to do this as a regular thing, by which I mean every time there's a new update, new patch notes, I'm going to try to go through them and sort of explain it the best I can. You guys seem to really like these episodes, and they're fair, you know, I wouldn't say they're not a lot of work, because they most definitely are. Like, I spent all day making this video, but they're definitely less work than a lot of other types of content. So I think we're going to make it a regular thing, assuming you guys would like me to. And that's at least been the response I've been getting so far. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. And as always, I love you guys. Stay awesome. Peace out.